So, Schefter, what is the latest?
Well, Hannah, the 49ers do not want to and do not intend to trade Brandon Aiyuk, despite the fact that he has asked the team officially to move on from him. And really what this comes down to is there is a disagreement on his value. The wide receiver market this offseason has shifted in front of everybody's eyes. If you look at all the wide receiver deals that have gotten done and the average annual salaries paid to wide receivers, you will see that the number has grown very much and very quickly to the point where what the Niners are offering Brandon Aiyuk isn't in there. The top guy right now, Justin Jefferson, at about $35 million. You have other wide receivers on that list, like A.J. Brown. You have Devontae Smith getting done at about 26.5. Jalen Waddle, 28. There are some of the numbers that you're looking at. So the idea here is, where do you slot in Brandon Aiyuk on this chart? And I think all these receivers in the Niners' minds would be north of what Brandon Aiyuk should be paid right now, when Devontae Smith is below them at about $26.5 million. Plus, Brandon Aiyuk has 1 year left on his deal. The Niners can tag him after that particular time, and so they have his contractual rights for at least this season and more if they opt to use it that way.
Yeah, there's definitely no reason, or rather no incentive for John Lynch to move him, especially considering where this team sits in terms of its competitive position in the NFC. I mean, why would you get off of a guy who's averaging over 17 yards per reception and over 80% of his catches either result in a touchdown or a first down? Why would you want to trade that kind of guy? You wouldn't want to trade him. Now, would you try and work out a deal with him? Of course you would. But here's the problem, as Adam just articulated. When you look at the offense in San Francisco and all the different people that they have that they try and spread the ball out to, and the different various ways in which they attack, he doesn't represent an inordinate amount of the firepower on that offense. It isn't just run through Brandon Aiyuk and then everyone else picks up scraps. They have tons of different guys that they can attack with. Therefore, if you're John Lynch, you're sitting there going, well, if he only accounts for a certain percentage of our production, albeit very, very important, especially to our young quarterback, if he is not carrying the weight the same way a Justin Jefferson or a CeeDee Lamb is, why would we go north of $34, $35 million per year for this wide receiver right now? And I'm sure Aiyuk is going, if I got the same number of targets that Justin Jefferson got, I'd put up bigger numbers than him, because look at what I'm doing with the little bit that I do get. So I understand the trade-off, but if you're John Lynch, you hold all the cards.
I think their silence speaks volumes, and I think Brandon Aiyuk is listening because of just what you said, Lewis. Their offense doesn't run through him, and he's valuing himself as a $30 million receiver, and the 49ers are saying, wait, our offense is not predicated on you. Our offense is not built around you. Yes, you are a valuable part, but you are not a $30 million receiver worth in this offense. And I think Brandon Aiyuk sees the writing on the wall is that the 49ers most likely want him to play this year on the last year of that deal. They drafted Ricky Pearsall, and they're going to let Brandon Aiyuk walk. And I think that's the thing that he sees. And he's saying, hold up, you want me to give you another year of service, then you're going to let me walk. So why would I do that? That's why he wants to trade now. Very similar, although the situation is not the same. Let's look at T. Higgins. T. Higgins knows they're not going to pay Jamar Chase and pay him. So he's like, why would I give you another year? Here's the only difference. T. Higgins has a franchise tag. He's getting a bigger number than Brandon Aiyuk is getting right now. And so T is saying, okay, what am I going to do? I can either accept this huge franchise tag number, or I cannot come in. And he chose to accept, I think the number's $20 million or whatever, where Brandon Aiyuk is saying, I don't want this $14 million. I don't want that number. What I want to do is go somewhere where I can get some of this guaranteed money that A.J. Brown, that Devontae Smith, that all these other guys are getting. Yes, the 49ers may want to negotiate with him at a lower number, but they do not value him as a $30 million receiver. And I think he sees that, and he's saying, why would I give you my year of service when you're going to let me walk?
And Booger, it comes back to the collective bargaining agreement. Brandon Aiyuk was a first-round draft pick where there was a fifth-year option that the 49ers exercised on Brandon Aiyuk. This is the fifth year for $14 million. T. Higgins was a second-round draft pick. The deals are for 4 years. He got franchised after that was up. And so essentially he's playing on a franchise tag. So in this particular case, being a second-round pick was more beneficial to T. Higgins than being a first-round pick was to Brandon Aiyuk. That's the CBA, and those are the rules right now.
And by the way, let's look at the way this team does business. Remember, a couple of years ago, it was Deebo Samuel saying, I want a trade. And, of course, we all know that late in that offseason, he got a new deal. They did the same thing with Robbie Gould. So we shall see. So as a high draft pick, just outside that top 10 there, what are the expectations for Nix now in Denver?
Well, Hannah, you mentioned all the quarterbacks they've had since Peyton Manning. And it was the same cycle and same situation after John Elway retired, where they went through any number of quarterbacks before they landed on Peyton Manning. So obviously they need somebody to step forward to stop the change. And I think that this team is hopeful and optimistic that in the long run, that's going to be Bo Nix, their first-round pick this past year. Now, this team was enamored with Nix. It had a grade on him that was equivalent to the top quarterbacks in this draft. This team was targeting Bo Nix from the outset, had identified him as somebody that could come in, learn their offense, execute it. And if we think back to all the traits that Sean Payton admired in Bill Parcells, one thing he loved was the fact that he liked quarterbacks with experience. Bo Nix started 65 games in college. So he comes in ready to win that job. We'll see if he can do that this summer, but it is set up for him to take over at some point sooner rather than later, with Bo Nix being given the chance to be the Broncos quarterback of the future and stop that list of quarterbacks on that carousel.
Yeah, you know, with Bo Nix, I'm going to be intrigued about where this goes. Of all the quarterbacks that were picked in the first round, for me, he was the least talented of all of them. And I think that if you're Sean Payton and you're the Denver Broncos organization, I think you fell in love with the fact that you gave Bo Nix the playbook one night and the next morning he could recite the playbook forward and backwards. So we know he's super smart. We know he's experienced. Well, you know, Bill Parcells said he wanted a quarterback, I think, that had over 10,000 plays or something like that, a ton of experience. But here's the key. When you step in the National Football League, can you execute this offense? A lot of people compare Bo Nix to Drew Brees. I'm not going to do that. Drew Brees is the first ballot Hall of Famer. Can Bo Nix come in and execute and be a ball distributor? At Oregon, we saw him improve from Auburn to Oregon. At Oregon, he threw the football short to intermediate with the best of them. In the National Football League, you can't dink and dunk on anymore. You got to be able to push the football down the field and be accurate with the football. And so I think the jury's still out on Bo Nix. For me, he was the least talented of all the quarterbacks taken in the first round. I'm going to give Sean Payton the benefit of the doubt, but I'm very intrigued to see where Bo Nix and this offense and this experience that he got at Auburn and Oregon take him.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when we discuss quarterbacks how the modern day discussion always turns to what ultimately is the upside of the quarterback from an athletic profile, from an arm strength profile, from an off-schedule profile. How many dramatic plays can a guy make? Can he throw the football sidearms 50 yards on a rope down the field and make the play that makes everybody in the crowd go, ooh? If a guy can do that, we give him the benefit of the doubt much more so than we give the guy who plays a more cerebral game, maybe isn't as talented physically, maybe doesn't have the same yards per attempt, but makes good decisions, is accurate with the football, doesn't turn it over to the tune of maybe 45 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, completes close to 80% of his passes at about 9 yards per attempt, that kind of clip. That's what Bo Nix did at Oregon. That's the kind of passer Drew Brees was in the NFL. No one mistakes Drew Brees for being one of the better athletes at the quarterback position in the history of the game, or someone who had this super high ceiling because he had a Josh Allen arm or had the flair of Patrick Mahomes. I think personally that's exactly what Sean Payton wants. He wants a guy that's going to run his system. He wants a guy who's going to make great decisions, who's not going to turn it over, isn't going to go out there coming off the sideline going, hey man, I just saw something and went for it. No, he doesn't want that. He wants Bo Nix. And he got him. Let's see what he does with it.
Are you saying he should start week 1, Lewis?
If he earns it, I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be shocked more so if he doesn't start week 1 than if he does.
The Dolphins defense also saw plenty of changes in free agency. They lose defensive tackle Christian Wilkins to the Raiders and a pair of starters in the secondary. And as you all know, they changed defensive coordinators. moving on from Vic Fangio in favor of former Ravens assistant Anthony Weaver, who also went to a pretty good school, the University of Notre Dame. Booger, what do you make of these changes in Miami?
Well, evidently, some of these changes needed to be made. I'm gonna start from the top down. You know, there was a lot of rumblings about Vic Fangio and this Dolphins defense, about how he couldn't get the best out of them. Some of the players didn't like Vic Fangio. They didn't like his style. Vic couldn't relate. Here's the one thing I know. Vic is one hell of a coordinator, and it's probably not him, it's you. I think this is an underachieving unit, regardless whether you want to say performance or injury. They had a lot of names on that defense, and we just listed on the graphic a lot of names. They got a lot of guys. Christian Wilkins was there, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Ramsey. They had a ton of guys. But Lewis, these guys, in my opinion, never really lived up to the hype. And there was some infighting, and Vic Fangio is no longer there. Now you bring in Weaver. I know Weaver. He's one hell of a coach. And so you go from a guy who you may not be able to relate to in Vic Fangio. Well, guess what? Anthony Weaver, you may can relate to him, but he's still a tough football coach. I think this unit has to stop underachieving, and their big-time players have to start playing at a big-time level in order for them to be where they want to be. Because last year, quite frankly, regardless whether it was injury or performance, in my opinion, they didn't do that.
Yeah, look, we know that all the discussion when it comes to Miami centers around Tua and Tua's contract and whether Tua can win in cold weather, Tua can push the ball down the field, Tua. We get it. But really, under the radar, under the surface, I guess I should say, this is the unit that needs to be watched. This is the unit, you're right, I agree with you, that needs to step up. And I'll take the same top-down approach. Whether you think it was Vic, whether you think it was the players, whether you think it was injury, it was all of it. All of it mattered. There were some disgruntled players down there that didn't like the approach, how they were utilized. Didn't develop the same relationship with him that maybe they can develop with Anthony Weaver, despite the fact that he may be a disciplinarian too. And he is someone who John Harbaugh absolutely loved in Baltimore, revered in Baltimore. But you know, injuries did play a huge part. When you lose Jalen Phillips, when you lose Bradley Chubb, when you lose Andrew Van Ginkel, all these guys got hurt in the stretch run. Right. That's just gigantic. So, yeah, Chop Robinson, you better step up. You better step up. Shaq Barrett, you have to play, man. You have to go. And Jalen Ramsey, you have to be the all-world DB you've been in the past. Because this unit, the spotlight is on it.
Yeah, well, you don't know how healthy Chubb's going to be at the start of the season. That's still one of the questions. This is a team that was 22nd in points per game allowed. We kept waiting for them to turn the corner. And as you said, Boog, they just never quite did live up to expectation.